So I moved to ASOS in a head of human resources role when the company was really titchy. Like there was like 30 of us or something back in 2004, and we were turning over about 7 million a year, and then that's incredible. It was incredibly fast growth, and in fact tomorrow's Black Friday. I'm not at ASOS anymore, but I'm imagining they will have turned over 7 million by lunchtime probably. So that was the kind of growth we had. So yes, I set up and I ran the corporate responsibility strategy for 10, 11 years, which we called Fashion with Integrity. And we had some successes along the way. We all know what the problems are with fashion, with fast fashion and with fast-growing fast fashion. So I'm not apologising, I'm not trying to excuse all that. I will say there's a lot of companies trying to do a lot of stuff. We've tried to do a lot of stuff, and we had some successes, as mentioned, in the areas of modern slavery, action on animal welfare, and positive representation of diversity on our websites. So as a result of the work that we were doing at ASOS, a lot of other companies over the years have come to me to ask me how to set up a strategy in their company, and those are really wide-ranging. I've had TV production companies, advertising agencies, logistics people, carriers, food companies, all coming for asking for advice, and so much so now I've left ASOS that I have set up this agency to advise companies, and I'm not advising like multinationals, obviously, because they have very elaborate setups already. I'm talking about like high street brands that you might have heard of, that I'm obviously not going to mention who they are, small and medium-sized businesses in all sectors, and smaller fashion brands. So what happens generally is that I get a call from somebody. Oh, that should have been there with my name on it before, sorry about that. So I get a call from somebody, from, you know, like a high street chain, going, oh my God, help, we know everything's, you know, there's so much environmental stuff, so much to do. We actually have no idea where to start. Could you come and tell us where to start? Because there's just so much. And usually that is somebody in it's usually the comms director, or it's the HR manager, or it's somebody who already works for the company, maybe in a reputational way or in a sort of purpose area, and their director's gone, we're not doing anything about corporate responsibility, you can do it. And that happens a lot. So they're usually panicking. And I actually absolutely love that question, because it means there's a huge potential for creativity and for a huge potential for starting to actually make a difference with the power of your brand. And I love that, but for the person on the end of the phone who's just been told to come up with a strategy by Friday, it's a cause for panic. And I do know a little bit how that feels, because when I was on maternity leave at ASOS in like 2007, I decided, I did a pitch to our chief executive. That's actually him abseiling for our charity off our office roof. I did a pitch to him saying we should have a corporate responsibility strategy, we should get going on this. And he went like, all right, Lou, kind of thing at the time, because we were still small then. So when I came back on day one, I didn't have a team, I didn't have a budget, I was like empty screen, empty files. Needless to say, my emails had somehow wiped whilst I was on maternity leave, so it was all kind of quite disastrous, and I was wondering, where should I start? Now, I did have a few ideas, and so I did start, so I'm going to go through that journey and share a few of those, and some ideas on how smaller companies can get going. Why is it important to engage smaller companies? Well, for me, I think it is very important, because although I've been working in a corporate world, I am actually an activist. I'm very passionate, and I have about climate, about environment, about LGBTQ equality, about gender equality, about mental health, about young people's confidence. All these areas I'm extremely, and about access to education. Those are all issues that are very important to me, and so I like to get companies to do stuff about those areas. So that's why I do my job. Sometimes my job, and people who have a job like me, we are actually sometimes we can be quite conflicted, because we have very strong ideals and we've got to try and move, not people who are necessarily resistant to the principle, but actually the practice of getting things changed is hard. So we can't always do as much as we would like. But the thing about the small companies are that I think it's the Federation of Small Businesses has a statistic that says of the private companies registered in Britain, about 99% of them are less than 500 employees. So they all need to do stuff. We all need to do stuff together with companies of all sizes, not just global ones. And I'm not suggesting that smaller companies are not doing anything, but I think most of us engage with different companies, different organisations, and I think we all know that we can all say we don't necessarily know what they're doing, or that they could maybe do a bit more, or it could be a bit more joined up, or they could communicate it a bit better. So that's the kind of what I'd hope for. So back to the actual question of where to start, what I usually say to clients is start by asking yourself as a business these two questions. Number one, where does my business do most harm? And number two, where could my business add most social value? Because at the end of the day, in business terms, that's what corporate responsibility is actually about. It's the two aspects of it. Reducing the harm, managing the risk, managing your reputational risk as a business, and on the other side, maximising your chance to engage your employees, your colleagues, your suppliers in actually positive stories and making a difference, giving something back, whatever you like to call it. So, first question, how does my business cause harm? Well, presumably some fashion students here, of course, but you will know that there are lots of harm associated with fashion. But whatever your business is, you've got to really face into that one and be honest. Because this is where you actually need to be putting your attention, your resource and your effort in changing how you do things. This is not a place where a charity partnership is going to cut the mustard at all. It's no use having your lovely partnership with the donkey sanctuary down the road if you make lasagnas and your meat sourcing's a bit dodgy and people think there might be some connection. That's really not a way to go. Sort your meat sourcing first. Similarly, it's not always the obvious thing that your company can really shift the dial on. For example, I mean, it's 2019 now, we should all be changing our light bulbs to LEDs, so that, like, are we going to change our office light bulbs to LEDs is not a big corporate responsibility strategy, unless your company runs Blackpool Illuminations or something, in which case that is mission critical to what you do. Don't do that. So back at my desk in the fashion company on day one, what's the biggest harm? The obvious biggest harm or potential harm amongst the areas to look at is ethical trade. So ethical trade is a term that we use in retail and in many industries to mean the investigation and improvement of labour conditions for supply chain workers that are actually making our stuff. So some of you will obviously know this, but garments are not made by the brand that's name is on them. They are made by third parties, and there's a chain below that. So there's a first tier, which is called cut, make, trim, that actually sew the stuff, sew them together. But then below that, there are, and companies might have, I don't know, 700 or 1,000 of those. Below that, there is then a whole load of other things: denim washing, laundries, embroideries, spinning mills, and it goes right back down, like say 5 or so layers down to maybe farm or forest if it's a wood-sourced fabric. So there are literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of potential workers affected by what your brand decides to do. But getting down to these lower levels is extremely difficult, because your contract is with the person at the top, the cut, make, trim area, and they are holding the contract with them, holding the contract. So it's not very easy to get this person to do anything, because they don't audit you, they don't respond, they're not contracted with you, they don't know you. So it's a slow and difficult process. But it's extremely worth it. That's absolutely central to improving what you're trying to do. We also did things like join cross-industry collaborations. We joined the Ethical Trading Initiative, which you've probably heard of, but it's a collaboration of NGOs, trade unions and brands working together to increase respect for workers worldwide and improve conditions. And we moved up their scale of assessment as time went by. And we started to do things that were like beyond what we call beyond audit. So we're not just going, we're appearing in your factory, are you doing this, are you doing this, but we're doing systemic changes with other brands that are looking at stuff like living wages, looking at the impact of gender inequality, looking at the impact of migrant working, things like that, which you have to do in a collaborative sense with loads of other brands. So a good decision that I think we made was to be as open and honest as we could. We had to be honest at the beginning, because we had no idea what we were doing. So we had to go, our supply chain looks terrible. It's a long time ago. And that turned out to be like a good strategy. And that brings me on to modern slavery legislation in 2015. I actually really like it when a good piece of environmental or human rights legislation kicks in that means you've got to do stuff in your company. Because in my job, which is like secret squirrel activist within a company, you've then got something you can use to focus everyone's attention, get budget, make people, make your board agree your strategy, and make people in teams who don't really want to change what they want to do because they're human, do things in a different way if you've got a bit of legislation that you've got to comply with. So I like that. And we took the modern slavery legislation as an opportunity. You might have noticed some people's, companies, that what you can do, by the way the legislation is unfortunately written, is that you can go like, well, we've looked everywhere in our supply chain, we've seen absolutely nothing, but we're totally committed to eradicating modern slavery. And that actually is compliant. It's a kind of the la, 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 haven't seen anything strategy. So we didn't do that. We took the opportunity, and there was a lot of discussion about this, but we took the opportunity to go, oh God, we've actually found modern slavery in our supply chain. Here it is in this country, here it is in that country, here it is in this country. And these are the things that we're doing. These are other brands we're engaging with to do it. This is the training we're doing. So we also got a globally known NGO, anti-slavery NGO, to work with us before we published it, so they could be, like a critical friend to go, you're not doing enough there, you're not doing enough there. You've said this, but you haven't been honest about this thing. So that was kind of quite tough in a commercial environment to be doing that, but actually it paid off in numerous levels. It paid off in terms of the fact we were actually able to then get a good conversation going with our other brands that sell on ASOS, bring them together, become more of a movement for change, for more people to be more honest and open about it, more acknowledgement that actually we all know we've got stuff in our supply chain, so don't bother saying, because of that complexity I mentioned, so don't bother saying that you haven't got anything, because of course you have. This is the purpose of it. So that was useful. It was also useful in a way, more pragmatically and reputationally as a business, because the NGOs that work in this space were extremely supportive of the step we had taken. So they're then not going to be sort of attacking us for the fact that they found something, because we're going, we found something. And it actually became a point of, they were able to go forward to other places and try and drive their movement using our honesty. So my point about this one is that if you're thinking about where to go first, maybe there's a legislative piece of compliance that doesn't have to be a tick box exercise. It can be a launch pad for actually a strong strategy that addresses some of the major harms in your particular area. Right, the next question is, how can my business add social value? There's me adding social value there. So the other side of corporate responsibility is adding social value by virtue of your business. So this is kind of almost the more fun one to side to work on, because it's about opportunities, not just risks. So that hopefully you can kind of bring the two together. I mean, as a business, you're already providing jobs, you're hopefully providing a good working environment, you're giving people the opportunity to develop, and you're looking after your people. So that's already something that you're kind of adding social value. But maybe by virtue of the business that you are in, maybe you can make a difference to an important cause or issue beyond your own business. For example, maybe you are a cycle courier delivery company. So maybe you could be the voice of cycle safety in the UK. Maybe you could use your platform for advocacy, to call on the government for better cycle lanes, for example. Maybe you could offer free cycle training in schools or for local schools. There's all kinds of things you could do that actually are useful for your brand, but also make an actual difference. So your corporate responsibility program needs to help you demonstrate what your company values and purpose are. And by doing that, you're giving your customers and your potential employees, as well as your employees, a reason why they should choose to stay with or join your company. So what should you actually do? And the first answer is, it doesn't mean that just like give a massive donation to like any old charity. Definitely not. And it's actually a real bugbear of mine, just because I work in this area, but it's a bugbear of mine that people inside companies don't always recognise that charity partnerships are actually a strategic business decision, and they are as strategic as any other area of the business, and they deserve the same amount of attention. So the community partnerships you choose should be right for your business and the issues you're facing, and not just reflect, say, for example, the personal interest of the chairman, which can happen. So back at the donkey sanctuary again, I'm not against donkeys, I'm just using it as an example. That may be a fantastic cause, but it might not be right for your brand unless you are the Seaside Illuminations company, or maybe you are a family hotel on the seafront, in which case that could be really relevant for you. So when I was at ASOS, as we developed our community strategy, I spent some time with colleagues and advisors and with marketing and brand experience team. We were looking at the company purpose, which is was and still is giving you the confidence to be who you want to be. So having that clear brand purpose helped enormously, because then everything you do can fit together. So in our case, we supported projects that helped people become more confident. So we supported LGBT equality charities, LGBTQ, Stonewall and GAD, and we also looked at mental health, we looked at anti-bullying. And then with the ASOS Foundation, which was our company charity, we concentrated on removing social and economic barriers to young people who wanted to progress into a home of their own, into a job, or into further education. So that all tied in with the purpose, and that was easier. Next one. Well, it's not my next one. Oh, well, I'll do that. So finally, with partnerships, community partnerships, I think it's important to let things develop over time. I know a lot of companies like to do charity of the month, charity of the this, charity of the year, and that's fine if that works maybe on the type of business they're in. I'm not a big fan of that. I am a big fan of getting your charity partnership right, working together over a number of years so that you get to know each other, trust each other, come up with good ideas, and actually then make a real difference over time instead of just like hit and run, here's 50 grand and next year it's something else. So the example that I just want to share, you may have heard of the ASOS Made in Kenya range, which is it's actually the Made in Kenya range is a commercial thing. It's not like a charity partnership, but it's a sustainable fashion range at ASOS that is made in a very rural Kenyan community in an eco-factory. It was a company, the company we work with is called Soko Kenya. It was set up by a fashion graduate, Jo Maiden, after she graduated 10 years ago, and ASOS has been the sort of 100% partner all along, and it's now employing over 60 people, and it has fully ethical principles. They give everyone a meal, they give everyone free healthcare, there's a nursery for people's children, workers have a voice, very collaborative, with a whole lot of training. It's a brilliant operation, and the ASOS Foundation has been partnering around that business in rural Kenya for looking at things that stop women being able to take up the opportunity of developing their work economically. So, for example, we're working on water infrastructure so that people are not spending all day carrying water. We have been we put in a stitching academy because we were enabling people to learn export standard skills so they could get jobs in the factory or set up a business. We set up a little business hub so graduates of the stitching academy could set up their own businesses. And the thing we're doing most recently, we also did a whole lot of training on things like family health, sexual health, financial management, things like that. The thing we've done most recently, which I love, is called the Kajura Initiative, which means the Knowledge Initiative, which is about period poverty. There's a lot of girls having to drop out of school at very young ages because there is no access to sanitary products there. And so what we're actually doing now is using the offcuts from the Made in Kenya range to make washable sanitary pads, and they are made in small businesses using the hub by women who are trained in the Stitching Academy, and we're giving those out. They've been delivered to about 1,500 young people now, and it's accompanied by health and hygiene training and talking, and we're including boys in that conversation too. So that is kind of like my favouriteest project of the ASOS Foundation, and I like the way I'm using it to illustrate the fact that there's a harm and a social impact there. There's obviously the sustainable factory and everything we did, and the ethical treatment of the workers, and then we're actually building our social community strategy around that. So, final little summary. Back to the oh my God, there's so much to do, where should we start question. There's just 5 points. You can't do everything. But you can make a start. So just make a start. Number 2, look at where you cause the most harm, whether it's as an industry or whether it's you as a company. Work with others in your industry to make an actual bigger difference if you can. Number 3, look at where you can use the platform and the audience you have as a brand or a company to make a positive difference. Engaging with your teams in your positive community work will actually get them on board with you more. They'll feel like you're a worthwhile employer and you're doing good stuff. And then when you ask them to do really hard things, like get rid of their supplier that you don't like because they're unethical, or change your light bulbs, or whatever, all those things, you're asking them to change their processes, which is hard when you're in a job, they'll be more on board with you because they know you've got a more holistic approach to things. Number 4, be transparent. Obviously, there's always a load of criticism of companies, and when it comes to it, most of us will work in a company of some kind. It's not like you're a good person, you want to be doing stuff. Be transparent, and hopefully people will be more forgiving of the fact that you are trying to get better and accepting of your honest mistakes. Number 5, be excited, because actually if you've got this opportunity of getting started with sustainability and corporate responsibility, it's like a brilliant opportunity to bring together things that you care about and bring your team together around things that they will care about. It's a good combination of creativity and doing the right thing, and it makes your colleagues and your customers feel great, and your organisation will grow and thrive with purpose.